Good morning, everybody. I appreciate y'all being here this early morning, especially Richard Bennett. You know, he's slow moving. But go to the House Appropriations Committee agenda for the day. Let's go to item 1 on this is House Bill 1177. I recognize the gentleman from Montgomery, Vice Chairman, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, many of you have been getting these. I got a letter earlier in the session from Secretary of State's office in regards to their providing copies of the general laws and journals of local and private. And that's what this bill does. I'll briefly read the short version of it. This will provide that the Office of the Secretary of State shall not provide laws of each session of the legislature for legislative committee meeting rooms in the new Capitol unless specifically requested in writing by the clerk of the House or the Secretary of the Senate for the committee rooms of their respective chambers, to provide that any other recipient of the general laws and journals listed in this section may waive the receipt of the general laws, journal, or both by written request to the Office of the Secretary of State. As many of you had to actually request it in writing to get that. And that's what this does. And this deletes the authority for the Legislative Service Office of the House and Senate to receive additional copies of the laws, journals, and local and private laws, to provide that the copies of these laws, journals, and local and private laws should be provided to the Legislative Peer Committee. And that's an explanation of the bill. Mr. Chairman, I have a committee sub, and this, because it's dealing with the Secretary of State's office, this committee sub was added. And it actually creates or authorizes the Secretary of State to insert into the Constitution proposed changes, alterations, or amendments proposed to the Constitution by initiative of the people or legislative alternative, in the same way that the Secretary of State inserts into the Constitution proposed changes, alterations, or amendments proposed to the Constitution that are passed by the legislature. And that's an explanation of the committee sub. I'll yield for questions.
Are there any questions of the gentleman pertaining to this? Gentleman from Calhoun, Mr. Beckett.
Yes, with the gentleman, there's nothing about this that changes the way that we have to do things. If we want to receive the material, we just do what we've always done.
In writing.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions for the gentleman? Gentleman, what is your recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, recommendation is title sufficient, do pass, committee sub.
Okay, you've heard the gentleman's recommendation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next item on the agenda will be House Bill 1251. I recognize the gentleman from Neshoba, Mr. Bounce, explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. House Bill 1251 simply takes the Mississippi Workers' Compensation Commission back to a special fund agency. If most of you recall, back in this 2016 session, a lot of these special fund agencies we converted to general fund. We have seen some issues come up, especially with these that draw down the biggest part of their operating capital from special funds, and all this would do would just return them to a special fund agency status, Mr. Chairman. And I'll entertain any questions.
Are there any questions for the gentleman about this issue, this bill? If not, what is your recommendation, gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, my recommendation is the title sufficient, do pass, committee substitute.
You've heard the gentleman's recommendation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next, again, on House Bill 1284, I recognize the gentleman from Neshoba to explain that bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, House Bill 1284 would just create a special fund within the Department of Revenue. What is happening here, your counties are collecting when they sell or distribute license plates, the cost of the decals, things like that. If somebody orders a specialty tag, the Department of Revenue has freight costs incurred. So what would happen, those additional costs that the county tax collectors are sending to the Department of Revenue to cover these costs is being absorbed just into their general fund now. We'd like to put this into a special fund so that the Department of Revenue would have that money available for these provisions, decal cost, tag cost, plate cost, freight costs on specialty tags. It would create this up to $500,000 would go into that fund. And in fiscal year 2022, if that fund reaches $500,000, anything above $500,000 would lapse into the general fund. So basically, we'd be keeping up to $500,000 in this created special fund and for them to cover their cost on being in the tag business, I guess, is the best way to explain it. And I'll entertain any questions, Mr. Chairman.
You've heard the gentleman's explanation. Are there any questions for the gentleman? Are there any questions? What is your recommendation, sir?
Mr. Chairman, my recommendation is title sufficient, do pass, committee substitute.
House Bill 1284, you've heard the gentleman's recommendation. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. Okay, on double referred, we're going to skip down to the middle of the second page, Medicaid Committee. At this time, I recognize the gentleman from Choctaw to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1013 is a bill that will create the Mississippi Medicaid Commission, which will be run by a 7-member board, 4 of which are appointed by the Lieutenant Governor, with 2 of the advice consent of the Speaker and 3 by the Governor. There'll be staggered terms. If one of the individual members resigns or can no longer serve, then that original appointing authority will be able to make that appointment. It also provides to keep some stability at the agency by allowing the executive director to stay on until 2024. At that time, the commission will appoint a new executive director. There will be no salary with regard to this. It would just be per diem expenses. The note on it that that LBO prepared showed it to be about a $15,000 expense. We did amend it in committee to make sure that no individual board members could have any type of financial interest. We do know that this is a bill as a work in progress, and we look forward as it moves through the process that there may be some other issues that we need addressed, which will either happen on the floor or in conference, and that is an explanation of the bill.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard the gentleman's explanation. Are there any questions for the gentleman?
Yes, sir. This is Representative Eubanks.
You're recognized, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. I've read some analysis on this by our director of Medicaid right now that highlights multiple issues with this bill. Shouldn't we work those out before we kick it to the floor?
Gentlemen, as you understand, when you're in your 5th year in the legislature, you know there's a process. And I have been aware, received some information that we may need to make some technical changes to this bill. And as it works through the process, we're going to make those. But as you know, today we're on a committee deadline and we're going to move this bill through the process. I look forward to sitting down with the executive director to discuss any concerns that he has or any concerns that any other member has. But you know, basically what this does is allows transparency for a $6 billion budget. A budget back in when it was turned over to the executive director was probably $300,000, but now it's a $6 billion budget item and the second biggest budget item in the state of Mississippi. And what we're doing with this bill right here is allowing some transparency, allowing some open meetings. And, but as I said, there are concerns, but we're going to work through the process, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the gentleman? Any other questions? Gentleman from Prentice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, are we taking the authority away from the governor to appoint the director with this new board? Is that what we're
It
doing?
will be after 2024.
After 2024. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the gentleman? If not, what is your recommendation, sir?
Title sufficient, do pass.
You've heard the gentleman's recommendation.
As amended.
What, now, let's state it again.
Title sufficient, do pass as amended.
Okay, y'all have heard the gentleman's recommendation. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
The ayes have it. Now let's go back to the head of the
Thank you.
double referred. Bring up House Bill number 100. I recognize the gentleman from the show, but to explain House Bill 100.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, House Bill 100 is simply a repealer extension on the Mississippi Telephone Solicitation Act. This is the fees that telemarketers and as such pay into. They do have a repealer. It lapses this year, and this extends the repealer to 2024, and that's all it does.
Are there any questions for the gentleman on House Bill 100? What's your recommendation, sir?
Mr. Chairman, my recommendation would be title sufficient do pass.
You've heard the gentleman's recommendation. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. Comprehensive not here. I'm gonna skip it. Okay. Next item on the agenda will be House Bill 466, and I recognize the lady from Amit to explain the bill. You have the
Thank you.
floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of the committee, House Bill 466 on line 115, it adds a section that at the end of each fiscal year that no less than $2.5 million is a balance in the inmate welfare fund is going to be used for transitional housing centers and for reentry. And it includes a repealer for July 1st, 2023. And brings forward code sections on the inmate welfare fund. And that's an explanation of the bill, Mr. Chairman.
You've heard the lady's explanation. Are there any questions? Any questions for the lady? If not, what is your recommendation, young lady?
Title sufficient do pass, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. All in favor of House Bill 466, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Next on the agenda will be the House Bill 852. I recognize the gentleman from Harrison to explain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First bill we have is 852. Is what this is the teacher salaries increase, the teacher pay raise and assistant pay raise. It's similar to the Senate bill. The only difference is that we have $1,100 for assistants in it instead of $1,000, and it's $1,000 for teachers and $1,100 for assistant teachers, and that is an explanation of the bill. If there's not any questions, my motion is title sufficient do pass committee sub.
Are there some questions? Gentleman from Prentice?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentleman, to you.
Yes.
Is there anything in the future we're going to look at trying to raise some of the other state employees' pay? I mean, a lot of people like at DHS, it's been like almost 14 years since some of those have had a pay raise as well.
I agree with you totally, and I think we do need to look at them, but that's not my committee. So, I mean, that's going to have to come from another direction.
Is this a possible vehicle that could be done with, or
Pardon?
it's not the vehicle that this could be done with in the future?
No, it's not code.
Thank you, sir.
Recognize Vice Chairman from Montgomery.
Gentlemen, you yield.
Yes.
Is this in addition to the step raises that
Yes.
they're currently getting?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Currently. Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the gentleman?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, recognize you, gentleman from DeSoto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we know what the total dollar cost this will be annually going forward for the
Around
state?
52 million.
Okay.
How much? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
52 million.
Okay, are there any other questions? And what was your, gentleman from Calhoun? I'm sorry.
I think I read it correctly, but it does have a reverse appealer in it.
No, yes, it does.
It does?
Yes, yes, it does. Getting it mixed up with another bill.
Okay, and what was your recommendation, sir?
Title sufficient do pass committee sub.
You've heard the gentleman's recommendation. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Next item is House Bill 925, and all this does is require new construction of school buildings or major reconstruction or major renovations to put in the water fountains that actually you put a bottle under. We already mandate that they have to have fountains, And we're not mandating to change out anything. If you go to any school right now, you'll see all the fountains are shut down. They've got them taped off. You can't use the fountains right now. They're having to give bottled water, and all this does is saying going forward, your fountain would have, we already mandate that you have to have fountains for so many fountains per number of students. So all we're saying is we're going, to be honest with you, a lot of the schools have already done this on their own on old construction, although we're not requiring it on old construction. Most schools have already done this, and I think it's just a common sense thing to do right now. And also in halls where there are students that have compromised immune systems, the schools have already doing that there also. And again, it's a safety thing. It's just new construction going forward. If there is no questions, my motion is title sufficient, do pass.
Are there any questions for the gentleman? If there's no questions, you heard his recommendation. All in favor of House Bill 925, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
The next item is House Bill 1047, and it's what we're doing here. I know that there's been I think most people has asked for these caps to be released. It's a supplement that we give to nurses, and we're adding athletic trainers to this, and speech language pathologists. And again, I had the number that are waiting for it. Let me see, there's not many. It's like 11 trainers in the state, and I apologize. Hold on just a second.
It's not.
12 nurses are waiting and 6 SLPs are waiting. We have 11 athletic trainers. And again, even though we raised the caps, there's a limit to the money that's funded that's in here for the mandate. So it still may be some cap just due to what we decide to allocate to this. Again, it's something that has been pushed for years. And to be honest with you, I'd encourage everybody to go sign on to the bill because it's pretty popular back in your district. Again, if there's no questions.
I have a question, gentlemen. Gentleman from the Neshoba.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just clarification, is this state dollars or is this local dollars? That would be
State dollars.
State dollars.
State
Okay.
dollars.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? And what is your recommendation?
Title sufficient, do pass.
You've heard the gentleman's recommendation on House Bill 1047. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
The next one is House Bill 1123. It's the Early Learning Collaborative. And what we're doing here this year, it's the same amount of money that we had in it last year, but we had it in an MDE bill, and it was something that was done towards the end of the session because it was overlooked. So we're putting it back in a bill of its own and a law of its own. And it's just the Early Learning Collaborative that we've been doing. And the amount of money in there is how many? Yeah, it's right around $1 million. And we just kept moving this forward each year, but this year it's going to have the same amount of money that it had last year. And if there's no questions, my motion is title sufficient, do pass.
You've heard the gentleman's explanation. Are there any questions for the gentleman?
Let me have 1179.
If not, his motion was title sufficient to pass. All in favor of that, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay, the next one's House Bill 1179. What this is essentially a cleanup bill. We have a lot of programs that are out there for teachers in areas that we can't get teachers or critical need areas, and they haven't been funded, and they're just out there, a number of them. So we are kind of combining them all into one, and it's the William Winter Jack Reed Teacher Loan Repayment Program. And they have to go and they have to teach in critical need areas and counties and where there's a shortage. And then we reimburse them. Again, this is all subject to, these are the programs that if we decide to fund them, this is the programs where the funding would go. We do have some funding in there, or had some, not a lot though. So we're just going to have to look at it and decide what we're going to fund and what we're not. Again, this is just the programs that we're trying to clean up the other programs that haven't been funded for years and just keep these two open. And it's kind of a cleanup bill.
Jim from Covington has a question.
Is it prorated, if forgiveness prorated if they, there we go. If
There
it's
you go.
only if they teach a certain number of years, but not the full time?
Yes. I mean, they get so much each year.
Okay.
Each year.
Are there any other questions for the gentleman? His motion was title sufficient do pass committee sub.
No, just title sufficient.
Title
do pass.
sufficient do pass, okay. All right, all in favor of House Bill 1179, say aye. Opposed, the ayes have it.
That concludes education.
Okay, education has cleared the floor. Okay, next item is from Judiciary B. I recognize the gentleman from Covington to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 799 concerns the terroristic threats bill that we passed into law in the last year or two, I believe. Prosecutors have asked for some language to be removed to help them be able to actually use it. If you look down on line 16, the threat has to be made, currently has to be made with the intent to intimidate or coerce a population to cede to the person's demands. And that's what would be removed, both on line 16 and on line 20.
7, 8 bills.
And that's the description of the bill.
You've heard the gentleman's explanation. Are there any questions for the gentleman?
One.
Gentleman from Prentice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, you.
Yes.
Was all the code sections removed from this bill to, that would have the potential to expand another DA district in the state?
Yes.
I have to find out what the code sections are.
Are the intentions to keep the bill clean as it goes through the process?
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Are the intentions to keep the bill clean as it moves through the process?
Well, this is not my bill and I'm not the chairman, so I probably can't give you a good answer on that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Are there any other questions for the gentleman? If not, could I ask your recommendation, sir?
Title sufficient do pass.
Okay, it was title sufficient do pass committee sub. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Next, let's go down to House Bill 91. I recognize the gentleman from the Neshoba to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen. House Bill 91, again, would remove the Public Service Commission from the provisions of the Mississippi Budget Transparency and Simplification Act that we passed and this body passed in 2016. It reverted all of their funds to a general fund agency. What they'd like to do, since all of their funds come from fees and things, special funds that are paid to them. So this would simply take the Public Service Commission back to a special fund agency, remove them from Senate Bill 2362 of 2016. And that's what the bill does, Mr. Chairman.
You've heard the gentleman's explanation. Are there any questions for the gentleman? If not, gentleman from Prentice.
He needs a microphone.
Hey,
Hold on. You gotta have a microphone.
Jerry, hold on. Get the microphone. There you go.
What about the fees, it being a special funds? I know that's how it's funded, but now who?
Their fees and what they can collect, it is my understanding, and I could be wrong, counsel, tell me if I'm wrong, that their assessments that they set themselves to the utilities and all that they regulate.
So they establish their own fees?
Right, yeah, whatever the legislature would appropriate in their special fund authority, if it was just say $3 million, they would go out and assess those that they regulate on a pro rata basis, that amount of money.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for the gentleman?
My motion would be title sufficient do pass on House Bill 91.
Okay, you've heard the gentleman. All in favor of House Bill 91, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we go to House Bill 108. I recognize Gentleman Show to explain that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, House Bill 108 would, let me give you just a brief history of the Wireless Communication Commission. They were established in 2005, 2006 by this body. They are the commission that oversees our MIS-WIN system, which is your statewide radio system for first responders and things like that. When they were first established by the legislature back in the early 2000s, obviously being a new commission, they needed parental, I'm going to call it parental guidance or support, and it's placed under ITS. This bill simply removes them out from under ITS after close to 20 years, 15 years or so. They have matured to a commission to where they can, they feel they can operate on their own. ITS has done a great job in helping them along and providing a lot of their back office and administrative responsibilities. Wireless thinks they can do that now. They have assured me that they can do this without any additional funding or without any additional pins, and simply would make it it would just take them out from under ITS and make them a standalone commission. And that's what the bill would do, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You heard the gentleman's explanation. Are there any questions for the gentleman? If not, your recommendation?
Title sufficient do pass, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, title sufficient pass on House Bill 108. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next item, I'm going to recognize the gentlelady from Lincoln to explain House Bill 148.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can hear me with my mask on?
Yes, you're okay.
House Bill 148 is a bill that we want to, as you remember, I think it was 2 years ago, but I'm not sure exactly what year, we created a fund in the state treasury known as the Mississippi Development Authority Tourism Advertising Fund. And it was to give MDA a money that they could count on every year to put into advertising in our wonderful state and all of their museums and the coast and all of the Elvis birthplace, everything, but they needed a funding source. So we did that a couple of years ago. And it does increase every year. And what we are trying to do is shine a light on our state parks. As you know, they need money right now to get them up to speed. And I just left the chamber and I heard Ways and Means doing that bill. So we want to get our state parks where people want to come and visit them again, but we also need to advertise how wonderful they are. So this bill takes 3% of the monies that's already been given to MDA and ask them to make sure that we do keep our state parks advertised as well. We kind of let them fall off the radar. That's my explanation of the bill. If there's any questions.
You've heard the gentleman from Prentice.
Thank you. Well, gentlelady yield.
Yes, sir.
Realizing the state that are in the situation that we find ourselves in with the state parks at this time, are we going to try to get our parks presentable before we spend a lot of money to invite people in to see such a mess that we've got now?
Well, and I will tell you that the reason we did 3%, it's about $180,000. And as we get these better, and we, like I said, there's a bill that they're doing in Ways and Means now in order to help them get the money to get the parks better. Hopefully, we could come back and increase this, but that's pretty much a drop in the bucket. But we have got to get people to start coming to the state.
Thank you, ma'am.
Gentleman from Montgomery.
Gentlelady, you yield.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay. This doesn't appropriate any additional funds. It's just using 3% of what's already available. Is that
That's
what I
exactly
understand?
correct.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Young lady, what is your recommendation?
Title sufficient do pass.
You've heard the lady's recommendation.
Committee sub.
Committee sub, you've heard the lady's recommendation. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. The next item on the agenda will be House Bill 111, and it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to read the title. This bill amends Mississippi Code 72 to authorize the boards of trustees of community and junior college districts to approve institutional specific policies pertaining to the waiver of out-of-state tuitions for out-of-state students who reside in a county or parish that is directly adjacent to one or more of the counties that compose the community college district where the student desires to attend and for related purposes. And that's what it does. It allows colleges to bring students from out of state that are adjacent to their districts and waive the out-of-state fee. And the IHL does this. Now, this is the authority that IHL has. The Community College Board trustees would like the same. And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. If not, what's the recommendation on that? The recommendation is title sufficient do pass. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. Next item will be House Bill 1029. Recognize Gentleman Calhoun, Mr. Beckett, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1029 is a bill that will allow our state institutions of higher learning. It authorizes and empowers them to enter into income share agreements with eligible students of their institutions. Under this agreement, the student commits to pay a specified percentage of their future income for a specified period of time in exchange for payment to or on behalf of the student for a portion of their cost of attendance. This is actually, there's one institution right now that has the funds. MSU has Perkins loan funds. That program is not going to be extended, so they're trying to find something to do with that money. It's a little over $2 million, like 2.15 that they think they'll have, and they're going to offer this agreement to these students, primarily targeting fifth year co-op students and people who are close to graduation that maybe they've run out of their federal student loan money, and there's less scholarship money available for these older kids. This should be a low cost mechanism for them to continue their education, shift some of the burden onto the schools to help them to graduate, encourage them to graduate, because this agreement is for repayment of future incomes. There's some deferral for the first 6 months the kid gets out of school. There's some deferral for children or students, they're not children, for students that make less than $20,000 a year when they get out. So there there are several mechanisms in to help people who don't come out of school just making a lot of money. And it's based on your repayment schedule, the months, and the payments are kind of based on your income and what you're getting your degree in. You'll pay your money back, but someone that's making less money will have a little longer to pay it back. It's very low interest charged to them. It's just it will not just be limited to Mississippi State, but they just have the money right now to do it. All our institutions would be authorized, and there's no state money involved. So they could use private foundation money or federal money or what other sources, but there's no state involvement. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for the gentleman from Covington?
Is there a provision for collection if they renege through, tax set off or something?
I don't think there's a provision for tax set off. There is like I said, there is some deferment if they don't get a job right away. There's deferment based on the amount of money that they make, but I would assume then all those details have not been worked out. This just authorizes the program, and the IHL is going to write all the rules and regulations, but that is not in the law.
Are there any other questions for the gentleman? Seeing none, what is your recommendation?
Title sufficient do pass.
Gentleman's recommendation, title sufficient to pass House Bill 1029. All in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Next on the agenda will be House Bill 1160. I recognize the gentleman from Harrison to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay. This is a dual credit community college scholarship program. It's created. It's something that the junior college presidents asked for. It's been double referred to the universities and colleges and appropriations. What it'll do, it's going to be tuition is offered by the community college at a deeply discounted price. Dual credit programs allow secondary students to enroll in post-secondary institutions and receive credit on both the secondary and post-secondary transcripts. The junior colleges are saying they've lost about $12.5 million last year to the dual credit. This won't affect how high schools do it. They can still offer the dual credits as they do now. And it's going to provide $24.5 million to community colleges for dual credit programs, the scholarship program. 19.5 million of it will be academic dual credit. That's about 130,000 semester hours at about $150 a semester credit hour, not course. And then 5 million for CET dual credit would offer about 20,000 semester credit hours at about $250 per semester credit hours. The program is going to be administered by the Mississippi Community College Board, which will develop the rules and regulations. Like I said yesterday in the subcommittee, I've got some concerns, but I'd like to keep, Manley Barton worked on this. He worked on it really hard over the summer and through this session has got a lot of work in it, but I'd like to keep it alive and put a reverse repealer on the floor because it's double referred. We can't do it here without killing it. So I'd like to just put a reverse repealer on it on the floor and continue to work on this and kind of see what the rules and regulations are going to be. I don't know if we need to leave it all up to the junior colleges or not. But again, I'd like to move it forward. I think it's a good idea. I just don't think everything's been worked out in it yet. And that's the explanation of the bill.
Are there any questions for the gentleman? Mr. Boyd?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How are these figures that we're putting in the bill, how are they accounted? How did we get to those figures? Was it something that the number of hours that they had last year or that?
The community college presidents and the board came up with these numbers. They worked with Manley on it to come up with this.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for the gentleman? Your recommendation, sir?
Title sufficient, do pass.
Okay, you've heard it. House Bill 1160, title sufficient, do pass. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, the ayes have it. Next, we have another item. It's House Bill 814. I recognize the gentleman from Itawamba to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill that we passed last year in the House and it died in the Senate. It simply this bill allows the Procurement Review Board to allow the AG's office to contract with expert witnesses at a later time And it doesn't tip their hand on how they're going to try cases. So it's just kind of one of these things that we're just giving them an opportunity to hire these people without doing it too early. This was one of the things that was asked for by the AG office.
You've heard the gentleman's explanation. Any questions for the gentleman on this bill?
Bill, is that?
Is there a question I didn't see? If not, what is your motion, sir?
Title sufficient to pass.
Okay, you've heard the gentleman's motion on House Bill 814. Title sufficient, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. That concludes this meeting this morning. These will go on the calendar, and naturally, we start floor action tomorrow. Appropriations, just want to let you know, we'll be probably first on the calendar. We're going to try to clear the calendar tomorrow morning. So at this time, I make a motion to rise and report.
Well, that's exactly right. If they don't have a clue, it don't matter.